No peace. No peace. Shut it down. Shut it down.
Demonstrations this week in the U.S. state of Missouri, more than 100 days after an unarmed black teenager was killed by a white police officer. Those connected to the case say a decision on whether to charge Officer Darren Wilson could come any day now. The killing of 18-year-old Michael Brown sparked months of heated protest, especially after witnesses said Brown was surrendering at the time that he was shot. The decision on whether to charge Officer Wilson lies in the hands of a group of citizens called a grand jury. Here's a closer look. Grand juries are made up of 12 members, and in Missouri, they're typically paid about $18 a day. They usually meet one day per week. 9 members must vote for a prosecution in order for the suspect to be charged. They vote for what's called probable cause, meaning there's enough evidence that he should go to trial. And unlike a criminal trial, jurors do a lot of the investigation, asking questions of the witnesses. The grand jury in this case has been meeting for months, and they are reportedly close to a decision about whether or not to indict. There is no definite time frame, although prosecutors say it could be any day now. After the decision is announced, protest organizers are ready to take to the streets, not just in Ferguson, but across the United States. CCTV America counts 64 cities where protests are planned on either the day of or the day after the grand jury decision. One of the cities where protests are planned is in Denver, in the U.S. state of Colorado. CCTV's Hendrik Sybrandy is based there and has insight on what to expect in Ferguson and beyond.
It's been a little over 3 months since protesters in Ferguson, Missouri expressed their anger in words and much more over the death of 18-year-old Michael Brown. The actions of Officer Darren Wilson remain implanted in many people's minds.
Took a little break, but things is not over. We want him arrested. We're going to keep marching until he's arrested. We want him in jail, locked up.
Now this small town prepares to hear from a grand jury that's been considering evidence in the case since just after the fatal shooting. It's a secretive process. Many in this community regard it with suspicion.
If there's not an indictment, frankly, it's because the prosecutor didn't push hard for one and seemingly thought there shouldn't be one.
The prospect of no indictment worries those who believe Michael Brown was murdered back on August 9th, pure and simple. And if Wilson is cleared of charges, they're ready to show the world how unhappy they are.
And then we just built a human chain.
Protesters have been rehearsing for mass demonstrations.
People are really working to find the confidence they need to go out there despite their fears.
And although Michael Brown's relatives have cautioned those protesters,
on behalf of the Brown family, we do not condone any acts of rioting, looting, or violence.
Over 1,000 specially trained law enforcement officers with lots of new riot gear will be on hand if things get out of hand.
If the grand jury does not indict, I think there's the potential for violence.
Former Westminster, Colorado Police Chief Dan Montgomery says while Ferguson police were caught flat-footed by the unrest in August, Missouri police agencies working together should be able to keep protests in check, provided officers stay in emotional control.
When cops get in trouble, that's the primary reason they get in trouble. They lose their composure, they become emotional, and emotion and logic cannot coexist at once.
He says both sides will need to show restraint, but that a replay of these scenes will not be tolerated.
When it hits the fan, you've got to do what you've got to do.
Hendrik Sybrandy, CCTV, Denver.